I knew the moment I saw her at the altar with another man. I had already destroyed her. She was wearing white. The lace was borrowed. She had not smiled in 3 years. I stood in the shadows of the cathedral. She could not see me, but I saw every tear she had cried for me, and I knew, as the vows were spoken, that I never deserved her forgiveness. The Duke called her useless at the banquet, his exact words. She heard them from the corner of the ballroom where the servants stood. Her tray of glasses trembled in her hands. The crystal caught the candlelight and shattered it into 1,000 fragments, each one a version of the life she might have lived if he had not broken her first. "I will not waste my name on a woman who cannot even pour tea without trembling," he had said, loud enough for the entire court to hear. His betrothed laughed, a silver sound that cut through the murmuring crowd. The Duchess-to-be did not know that the servant girl in the corner had already carried the Duke's child, did not know that the man she was about to marry had knelt before that same servant in a garden at midnight, whispering promises he would never keep. But the kingdom knew one version of the story, the official version, the clean one. She was a servant, a nobody, a mistake he made in the dark and tried to forget. He was the Duke of Ashworth, cold, untouchable, carved from marble and ambition. He had an estate that stretched to the horizon, a bloodline that traced back to the conqueror, and a reputation that had never been stained by scandal. Until the night the gardener saw them in the rose garden, until the maid found a torn letter in his study, until the whispers began, soft at first, then sharp enough to draw blood. The official story was simple. She seduced him. She was ambitious. She was a common girl who reached for something above her station and burned herself on the fire she tried to steal. But this is where everything breaks apart, because the official story is a lie, and the kingdom believed it for 7 years. Let me show you what really happened. Let me take you into the shadows of Ashworth Manor, into the room where he wrote her a letter every night for 3 years and never sent a single one. Let me show you the moment she stopped being invisible to him, and the moment he became the monster she would spend the rest of her life surviving. You need to understand what he did next. The night after the banquet, she packed her things. A single canvas bag, a dress she had sewn herself, a silver locket that held a lock of hair from a child he had never seen. She stood at the servants' gate, rain falling in sheets, the gravel cutting through her thin shoes. She did not look back at the manor. She did not cry. She had stopped crying the night he told her, in that same garden, under that same moon, that she was not worthy of his name. "You are a beautiful mistake," he had said, his voice soft, almost tender. But mistakes must be corrected. She had not understood what he meant until the morning she woke alone, the bed cold beside her, a purse of gold on the nightstand, the price of her silence, the cost of her dignity. He had paid her to disappear. She left before dawn. She took nothing that belonged to him. She left the gold on the nightstand, and she took with her the one thing he would spend the rest of his life searching for, the knowledge that he had been wrong, that she was never useless, that she would one day save the kingdom he was too blind to protect. But that is a story for later. First, you need to understand who she was before he broke her. Her name was Elara. She had been at Ashworth Manor since she was 12 years old, a kitchen girl, then a scullery maid, then a lady's maid to the Duke's late mother. She had learned to read by candlelight, stealing books from the library and returning them before dawn. She had learned to speak French by listening to the governess tutor the Duke's younger sister. She had learned to move through the manor like a ghost, invisible, silent, indispensable. And he had noticed her, not because she was beautiful, though she was, but because she was the only person in the manor who did not flinch when he walked into a room. The servants bowed, the nobles fawned, the women simpered and batted their lashes. But Elara looked at him like he was just a man, like his title meant nothing, like the only thing that mattered was the way he treated her. That look undid him. He had been raised to believe that power was everything, that a duke was not a man. He was a monument. He had been taught to hide his emotions, to suppress his desires, to marry properly and produce an heir and never ever fall in love with someone beneath his station. But he fell anyway. It happened slowly, a glance that lingered too long in the hallway, a brush of fingers when she handed him his tea, a night in the library when she was dusting the shelves and he was reading by the fire, and she looked up at the same moment he did, and the air between them thickened with something neither of them could name. He asked her to stay late that night. She did. And the next night. And the next. Their affair was a secret, But secrets have a way of growing teeth. The maids knew. The butler knew. The gardener knew, and said nothing because the Duke paid him well. The only person who did not know was the woman he was supposed to marry, Lady Catherine of Hawthorne, the daughter of a neighbouring earl, a woman whose dowry could have bought half the kingdom. Lady Catherine was beautiful, she was proper, she was everything a duchess should be, but she was not Ilara, and Ilara was carrying his child. She told him in the garden, under the same moon where he had first kissed her. She told him with her hands trembling and her voice barely a whisper. She told him with hope in her eyes, hope that he would do the right thing, that he would choose her, that love could conquer blood and title and the weight of 1,000 years of tradition. He did not choose her. He looked at her with something that might have been grief, or might have been fear, or might have been the first crack in the wall he had built around his heart. And then he said the words that would haunt him for the rest of his life. I cannot marry a servant. I cannot raise a bastard heir. This, what we had, it was never meant to last. She did not cry. She had cried enough in the weeks before, alone in her room, pressing her face into the pillow so no one would hear. She simply looked at him with eyes that had already accepted the truth, that he was not the man she thought he was, that the Duke of Ashworth was a coward, wearing a crown of lies. I will leave at dawn, she said. You will never see me again. He watched her walk back to the manor. He watched the candlelight flicker in her window. He watched until the light went out. And then he went inside, sat at his desk, and wrote her a letter. He wrote, My dearest Ilara, I would turn my back on the kingdom if it meant I could keep you. I would give up the title in the morning if I could see you smile at me once more. But I am a coward. And cowards do not deserve the love of women like you. I will think of you every day for the rest of my life. I will never forgive myself. I will never stop loving you. He sealed the letter. He did not send it. He placed it in a drawer with 100 others, all written, all unsent, all hidden from the world, like the truth he could not face. But the kingdom believed he had ended it cleanly, that he had rejected her and moved on, that he was the same cold duke he had always been, untouchable, unbroken, unfeeling. The kingdom was wrong. He would spend 7 years searching for what he threw away in one night. She left at dawn, as she had promised. She walked through the fog with nothing but the dress on her back, the locket around her neck, and a child growing in her womb. She walked until her shoes wore through and her feet bled. She walked until she reached the village of Thornwood, 12 miles from Ashworth Manor, where a widow named Margery took her in and asked no questions. Margery was a healer. She had hands that knew the weight of grief and the shape of mercy. She taught Ilara everything she knew, how to set broken bones, how to brew fever-reducing teas, how to deliver a child without fire or prayer, or a man standing helpless in the corner. She taught Ilara that usefulness was not measured by the company you kept or the name you carried, but by the lives you saved. And Ilara learned. She learned that her hands could heal, that her voice could calm, that her presence could turn a deathbed into a place of peace. She learned that the woman the Duke had called useless was the only person in 3 counties who could stop a fever from taking a child. She learned that she was powerful. And in the 7th year, the kingdom called. A plague swept through the northern lands. It started in the fishing villages along the coast, a cough, a fever, a darkness behind the eyes. It spread faster than anyone anticipated. It crossed rivers and borders, jumped from port to port, crawled into the cities and the estates and the manor houses where the nobles thought themselves immune. 7 years. 7 years of healing, of rebuilding, of becoming the woman the Duke threw away. And now the plague that spares no title is at his doorstep calling her back. Subscribe to follow Ilara's return to the world that broke her. We are watching a story where the forgotten rise. Tell me in the comments, when the kingdom calls, does she owe them her mercy or does she owe them nothing? The king fell ill. The queen followed. The royal physicians burned through every cure they knew, leeches and herbs and prayers to gods who seemed to have abandoned them. The plague did not stop, it did not slow. It took the strong and the weak, the wealthy and the poor, the guilty and the innocent. It was a disease that did not care about titles, and the Duke of Ashworth watched his world crumble. His betrothed Lady Catherine fell ill on the 3rd day of the outbreak. He had not married her yet. The wedding had been postponed twice, once because of a border dispute, and once because of a letter he had written but never sent. She lay in the east wing of Ashworth Manor, her pale skin burning with fever, her breath shallow and broken. The physicians said there was nothing more they could do. and the Duke realized for the first time in 7 years that he was completely powerless. He remembered Ilara. He remembered the way she had healed a kitchen boy who had cut his hand to the bone, stitching it with a needle and thread, cleaning it with vinegar, wrapping it in linen. He remembered the way she had nursed his mother through the final weeks of her illness, sitting by her bedside for nights on end, reading aloud from books the old Duchess had loved. He remembered that she had been the only person in his life who had ever made death retreat. But she was gone. He had driven her away, and he had no idea where she had gone. Except, the kingdom whispered. Servants talk. Merchants carry news like cargo. And a woman who heals for free, who asks nothing but bread and shelter, who moves through villages like a quiet storm of compassion. Such a woman cannot stay hidden forever. The Duke heard the whispers. He ignored them at first, too proud, too afraid to hope. But when the plague reached the walls of Ashworth Manor, when he heard the servants whispering about a healer in Thornwood, a woman with a child, a woman who matched the description of the servant he had sent away, he could not ignore the truth any longer. She was alive, she was close, and she could save them all. But would she come? He wrote her a letter, a real one he intended to send. Ilara, I have spent 7 years regretting every word I said to you that night. I have spent 7 years searching for you, though I told myself I was not. I have spent 7 years writing letters I never sent, because I did not deserve to speak to you. I know you have a child. I know the child is mine. I know this because I counted the months, and because I have seen the eyes of a boy in Thornwood, who looks exactly like my brother when we were children. I do not ask for your forgiveness. I ask for your mercy. The kingdom is dying. The plague does not care about my title or your station. It takes everyone. It will take Lady Catherine. It will take the king. It will take the boy who carries my blood and your grace. I cannot save them, but you can. I will come to you. I will kneel before you. I will beg if I must, but I will not force you. I have already forced enough. If you refuse, I will understand. I will send word to every village in the kingdom that a healer lives in Thornwood, and I will let them come to you. But I will not come myself. I have no right to stand in your presence. I remain, though I do not deserve to, yours, Ashworth. He sent it. He watched the messenger ride through the fog, the letter tucked inside the man's coat, the seal unbroken. And then he waited. He waited for 3 days. On the 4th day she arrived. She did not come to Ashworth Manor. She sent word, a note carried by a boy written in a hand he remembered from 1,000 library candles. I will come to the village. I will set up a healing tent in the square. I will treat anyone who comes to me, noble or servant, rich or poor, duke or beggar. The boy will not be there. He is safe. He will remain safe, whether you accept my terms or not. If you want my help, you will come to me, not as the Duke of Ashworth, as a man, as the father of my child, as the person who has the most to lose. If you cannot be that man, do not come at all. He read the note 3 times. He folded it carefully. He placed it in the drawer beside the 100 unsent letters. And he went. He walked through the fog alone. No carriage, no servants, no title. He walked like a man stripped of everything but the desperate hope that the woman he had broken might still have enough mercy left to save him. The healing tent was white canvas, lit from within by oil lamps. He could see her shadow moving behind the fabric, the shape of her shoulders, the curve of her spine, the way she moved with the quiet confidence of someone who had rebuilt herself from nothing. He stopped at the entrance. He could hear her voice inside, calm, measured, speaking to someone in pain. Breathe through it, she said. You are stronger than you know. He had heard those words before. She had said them to him once, in the garden, when he had confessed his fear of becoming his father. She had looked at him with eyes that saw through the title, through the armor, through the lies he told himself. She had seen the boy underneath the Duke, and he had betrayed that boy. He pushed the tent flap aside. She was kneeling beside a child, a girl of perhaps 8, her face flushed with fever, her mother weeping in the corner. Ilara did not look up. She was focused on the girl's wrist, counting the pulse, her fingers pressed gently against the fragile blue veins. The fever is breaking, she said. She will need water and rest. Keep her cool. I will return in the morning. She stood. She turned. She saw him. And the world stopped. 7 years vanished. The night in the garden, the gold on the nightstand, the letter he never sent, the child he had never held, all of it compressed into the space between their eyes. She looked at him, and he saw that she had changed. The softness was gone. In its place was something harder, stronger, something that had been forged in fires he had never known. She did not smile. "Your Highness," she said. The title was a blade. "I am not here as a duke," he said. His voice was hoarse. "I am here as a man who has spent 7 years learning that he was wrong." "You were not wrong," she said. "You were cruel. There is a difference." He flinched. She did not. "I did not come here for forgiveness," he said. "I came because people are dying, because you are the only one who can save them, because I would rather face your judgment than watch my kingdom burn." She studied him for a long moment. The oil lamp flickered. The child in the corner coughed softly. "You are afraid," she said. "Not a question. A statement." "Yes." "Good. Fear is honest. It is the only thing you have ever said to me that was not a performance." She stepped past him, out of the tent, into the fog. He followed. The village square was empty. The cobblestones were slick with mist. She walked to the center, stopped, and turned to face him. "I will heal your kingdom," she said, "but not for you, not for your title, not for the name you tried to give me as payment for my silence." She lifted her chin. Her eyes were iron. "I will heal them because it is what I do, because I am not useless, because the woman you called a mistake has saved more lives in 7 years than you have in your entire bloodline." He dropped to his knees. He did not plan it. The movement came from somewhere deeper than thought, a surrender so complete that his body obeyed before his mind could protest. He knelt on the wet cobblestones, the fog curling around his shoulders, the cold seeping through the fabric of his coat. "You are not a mistake," he said. His voice cracked. "I am. Every day I wake, and I know that I am the mistake. I am the thing that should not have happened. I am the heir who could not love properly, the duke who could not protect, the man who sent away the only woman who ever made him feel human." She stared at him. Her expression did not change. "I do not expect you to forgive me," he said. "I do not expect you to love me. I do not expect you to let me see the boy. I expect nothing." He reached into his coat and pulled out a letter, the one he had written that night, 7 years ago, the one he had never sent. "I kept this," he said. "I have written you 100 letters. I never sent any of them, but I kept them all. I keep them in a drawer beside my bed. I read them when I cannot sleep. I read them when I need to remember that I am capable of feeling something true." He held the letter out to her. "This is the first one," he said, "the one I wrote the night you left. I want you to read it, and then I want you to burn it, or keep it, or use it to light a fire that warms your home. Do whatever you want with it. It was never mine to keep." She took the letter. Her fingers brushed his. He felt the touch like a wound reopening. She did not open it. "I will read it when I am ready," she said, "if I am ever ready." She turned and walked back toward the tent. He stayed on his knees in the fog. Behind her she left the smell of oil lamps and herbs and the faint trace of a life he had not been part of. He stayed until the fog swallowed her, until the tent flap closed, until the only sound was the distant tolling of a bell from the village church. He did not follow, but he did not leave either. He stayed in Thornwood for 3 weeks. He stayed in a room above the tavern, wearing plain clothes, eating bread and soup, waiting. He visited the healing tent every day, but he did not speak to her. He watched her work. He watched her move from patient to patient, her hands steady, her voice calm. He watched her heal noblemen and beggars, women in labor, and children with fevers. He watched her become the person he had never allowed her to be, and she watched him watch her. The first week she ignored him. The second week she began to nod when he arrived, a small acknowledgement, nothing more. The third week she spoke. "You have been here for 19 days, she said. "The plague is receding. You could go back to your manor." "I could," he said. "Why don't you?" He looked at her. The oil lamps cast shadows across her face. She was thinner than she had been 7 years ago, not from hardship, but from purpose. She had the lean, quiet strength of someone who had learned to survive without help. "Because I have not finished learning," he said. "Learning what?" "How to be the man you deserve, not the one you loved. You have moved past him, but the one who can stand beside you without shame." She did not answer. She turned back to her patient, but he saw something, a flicker in her eyes, a softening at the corner of her mouth. He had not made her believe him. He had made her consider the possibility. And that was more than he had hoped for in 7 years. On the 23rd day, the messenger came. The king was dying. The royal physicians had exhausted every option. The queen had sent a desperate plea to every healer in the kingdom, and word had reached the capital that a woman in Thornwood had stopped the plague in its tracks. The messenger knelt before Ilara, offering the Queen's seal and a chest of gold. "Her Majesty requests your presence at the palace," he said. "The king has 3 days, perhaps 4. She begs you to come." She did not turn to him with love. She turned to him with purpose. She gave him a role, not a redemption. If you want to see whether a broken duke can become the man she deserves, subscribe so you do not miss what happens when a queen's desperation meets a healer's quiet revenge. Tell me in the comments, would you have let him carry your supplies, or would you have sent him back to his manor alone? Ilara looked at the chest. She looked at the seal. She looked at the duke, still standing in the corner of the tent, still wearing his plain clothes, still waiting. "I will come," she said. "But I do not need the gold. I need something else." "Name it," the messenger said. She turned to the duke. "Bring him," she said. "He will carry my supplies. He will be my assistant, and he will stay silent unless I speak to him." The messenger looked at the duke. This man in simple clothes with calloused hands and shadowed eyes. He did not recognize the Duke of Ashworth. No one did. "Who is this man?" the messenger asked. Ilara smiled. It was the first time the duke had seen her smile in 7 years. "He is the man who ruined me," she said, "and the man who will spend the rest of his life earning the privilege of standing beside me." The duke bowed his head. "Take me to the capital," he said. They traveled for 2 days. The duke carried her supplies, herbs and tinctures and clean bandages. He did not complain. He did not speak unless she spoke to him first. He slept outside her tent, his back against a tree, watching the stars and wondering if she had ever looked at them the way he did. She had. He knew that. She had lain beside him in the garden 7 years ago and traced constellations with her finger. "That one is Orion," she had said. "He was a hunter. He loved a woman named Merope, but she did not love him back, so Zeus placed him in the sky to chase her forever." "Does he ever catch her?" he had asked. "No," she had said. "That is the tragedy of love. Some chases never end." He had not understood what she meant then. He understood now. They reached the capital on the morning of the 3rd day. The palace was a fortress of white stone, its towers piercing the grey sky like the fingers of a supplicant. The queen met them at the gate, not in silk and jewels, but in simple mourning clothes, her face pale, her eyes red. "You are the healer from Thornwood," the queen said. "We have heard of your work. The king is in the east wing. I will take you to him myself." Ilara followed the queen. The duke followed Ilara. He stayed a step behind her, a shadow, a penitent. The king's bedchamber was vast. The curtains were drawn. The air smelled of sickness and incense. The king lay in the center of the bed, his face grey, his breath shallow, his hand resting on the coverlet like a dead leaf. Ilara approached. She knelt beside the bed. She took the king's wrist in her hands. The queen watched. The duke watched. The servants watched. Ilara closed her eyes. The room fell silent. And then she began to work. She did not use leeches or bloodletting or the brutal remedies of the royal physicians. She used herbs, rosemary for the fever, willow bark for the pain, chamomile for the restless sleep. She used water, cool cloths on his forehead, warm compresses on his chest. She used her hands, pressing, soothing, coaxing the life back into his failing body. She did not sleep for 40 hours. The duke stayed in the corner of the room the entire time. He did not leave. He did not eat. He watched her work, watched her hands move with the same grace he had seen in the garden, watched her brow furrow with concentration, watched her lips move in quiet prayers to gods he did not know. And he understood, finally, what he had thrown away. He had not lost a woman. He had lost a force of nature, a woman who could heal kings and stop plagues and rebuild herself from the ashes of his cruelty. He had called her useless because he was afraid of how powerful she truly was. The king's fever broke on the 2nd night. Ilara collapsed. She did not faint. She simply sat down on the floor, her back against the bed, her eyes closed, her hands limp in her lap. The queen rushed to her. The servants brought water. The duke stayed where he was, frozen, watching her chest rise and fall. She was alive. She was exhausted. She had saved the kingdom's heart, and he had never felt more unworthy. The king recovered. The queen wept. The palace erupted in celebration. The healer from Thornwood was hailed as a miracle worker, a gift from the gods, a woman whose name would be sung by bards for generations. Ilara did not stay for the celebration. She slipped out of the palace in the grey hours before dawn. her bag on her shoulder, her feet silent on the marble floors. She had done what she came to do. She had saved the king. She had proven, to herself, to the kingdom, to the duke, that she was not useless. She was walking through the palace gardens when she heard his voice. "Please." She stopped. She did not turn. "I have been kneeling for 7 years," he said. "But I have been kneeling in silence. I have been kneeling in the dark. I have been kneeling in a room full of letters I never sent." She heard his footsteps on the gravel. "Let me kneel where you can see me." She turned. He was standing 10 feet away. He was not dressed as a duke. He had not bathed in days. His coat was wrinkled. His boots were muddy. His eyes were red from sleeplessness. But he did not look broken. He looked like a man who had finally understood. "I love you," he said. "I have always loved you. I loved you when I sent you away. I loved you when I stood at the altar with another woman. I loved you when I wrote letters I was too afraid to send. I have loved you every day for 7 years, and I will love you every day for the rest of my life, whether you are beside me or 1,000 miles away." She did not speak. I do not ask for your love in return," he continued, his voice breaking. "I do not ask for your trust. I do not ask for a single moment of your time that you do not offer freely. I ask only for the chance to prove that I have changed." The garden was silent. The first light of dawn was bleeding through the trees, painting the gravel gold. She stood motionless, her bag still on her shoulder, her face unreadable. "There is a boy," she said. "He is 7 years old. He has your eyes. He has your stubbornness. He has your habit of leaving books open on the table when he falls asleep reading." The duke's breath caught. "He does not know who you are," she said. "He thinks his father died before he was born. I told him that his father was a good man who was taken too soon. I told him this because I did not want him to carry the weight of knowing that his father chose to abandon him." The duke's knees buckled. He caught himself on a stone bench, his hand gripping the cold edge. "You do not get to meet him tomorrow," she said. "You do not get to meet him next week. You do not get to meet him until I am certain that you will not break him the way you broke me. I understand. Do you? He is not a title to inherit. He is not an heir to mold. He is a boy who collects stones from the riverbed and names them after constellations. He is a boy who cries when he sees a wounded animal and spends hours trying to heal it. He is a boy who looks at the stars and asks if his father can see them too." The duke pressed his hand to his mouth. "When I am ready," she said, "I will bring him to you, and you will kneel before him. You will tell him who you are. You will tell him that you were a coward, and you will let him decide if he wants you in his life." She turned away. "Until then you will wait." She walked through the garden gates. The dawn swallowed her. The duke stayed on the bench, his hand pressed to his mouth, his shoulders shaking. He did not follow. He waited. The weeks turned into months. The plague receded completely. The king recovered fully. The kingdom celebrated the healer from Thornwood, but she did not return to the capital. She stayed in her village, tending to the sick, teaching the young, living the life she had built from the rubble of his betrayal. The duke returned to Ashworth Manor. He sat at his desk. He opened the drawer full of unsent letters, and he began to write again. "Dear Ilara, today I watched the sun set over the western fields. I remembered that you once told me the sunset looked like a wound healing. I did not understand what you meant then. I understand now." He sealed the letter. He sent it. She did not respond. He wrote another. "Dear Ilara, I visited the garden where we first kissed. The roses have grown wild. I have not allowed the gardeners to trim them. I like them wild. They remind me of you." He sealed it. He sent it. She did not respond. He wrote every week for 6 months. He wrote about the weather, about the harvest, about the books he was reading. He wrote about the dreams he had, dreams where she was standing in a field of white flowers, and he was running toward her and he never reached her. He did not write about love. He did not write about forgiveness. He wrote about the mundane details of a life that had become empty without her. And then, on the first day of spring, a letter arrived. It was not from her. It was from the boy. The handwriting was uneven, the letters leaning in different directions, the words spelled phonetically. "Dear Duke, my mother says you are my father. She says you made mistakes, but you are trying to be better. She says I should write to you and tell you about myself. My name is Finn. I am 7 years old. I have a dog named Bracken. I like to draw maps. I found a bird with a broken wing and I fixed it. Do you like birds? Your son, Finn." The Duke read the letter 17 times. He wrote back that night. He wrote about the birds that nested in the eaves of Ashworth Manor, swallows with blue-black wings and white bellies. He wrote about the map of the kingdom that hung in his study, worn and faded, annotated in his grandfather's hand. He wrote about the dog he had as a boy, a terrier named Pip who had slept at the foot of his bed for 12 years. He did not ask to meet Finn. He did not push. He wrote another letter, and another. The correspondence continued for 3 months. The boy wrote about his lessons, his adventures, the stones he collected. The Duke wrote about the constellations, the history of the kingdom, the way the light fell through the library windows in the afternoon. And then, one evening, a second letter arrived. This one was from her. Dear Ashworth, Finn asks about you every day. He wants to know when he can meet you. He has drawn a picture of the two of you standing in a field holding hands. I am not ready to see you. But I am ready for him to see you. There are conditions. You will meet him in Thornwood, in the village square where I first saw you kneel. You will come alone. You will not wear your title. You will be a man, not a duke. And when he asks you why you left, you will tell him the truth. If you lie to him even once, you will never see him again. If you are ready to accept these conditions, come on the first day of summer. Ilara. The Duke read the letter. He folded it carefully. He placed it in the drawer beside the 100 unsent letters, and he waited. The first day of summer arrived. He woke before dawn. He dressed in simple clothes, a linen shirt, wool trousers, boots that had seen years of wear. He did not wear his signet ring. He did not take his carriage. He walked through the misty fields across the stone bridge into the village of Thornwood. The square was empty. The fountain was dry. The only sound was the wind moving through the leaves of the old oak tree. He stood in the center of the square, where he had knelt 7 months ago. And he waited. They came at midday. She walked first, taller than he remembered, her hair streaked with grey at the temples, her face lined with the quiet authority of someone who had earned every mark. Behind her, holding her hand, was a boy. Finn. He had the Duke's eyes. He had the Duke's dark hair falling across his forehead in the same careless way. He had the Duke's habit of tilting his head when he was curious, studying the world with a seriousness that seemed too old for his years. He stopped a few feet away. "Are you the Duke?" the boy asked. "I am a man named Ashworth," the Duke said, his voice rough, "and I am your father." The boy studied him. "Why did you leave?" The Duke felt the question like a blade. He looked at Ilara. She stood motionless, her arms crossed, her face unreadable. He looked back at the boy. "Because I was afraid," he said. "Afraid of what?" "Afraid of being unworthy of your mother, afraid of failing you, afraid of loving something so much that losing it would destroy me." The boy frowned. "That is a silly reason." The Duke let out a breath that was almost a laugh. "Yes," he said, "it is." The boy stepped closer. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a smooth grey stone polished by river water. "I brought you this," he said. "It is from the river where I find my best stones. It is a lucky one." The Duke took the stone. It was warm from the boy's pocket. He closed his fingers around it. "Thank you," he said. "I will keep it forever." The boy smiled. It was the Duke's smile. The same shape, the same warmth, the same unconscious charm. And for the first time in 7 years, the Duke felt something that was not grief. He looked up at Ilara. She was watching them. Her arms were still crossed. Her face was still unreadable. But her eyes were softer than he had ever seen them. She did not smile, but she did not look away. And that, he knew, was the beginning of something he did not deserve. But he would spend the rest of his life earning it. Some promises are not meant to be kept. They are meant to be shattered, so two people can rebuild from the pieces. The moon rose over Thornwood that night, silver and full, casting long shadows through the empty square. The Duke sat on the edge of the dry fountain, the boy's stone warm in his palm, turning it over and over like a prayer. He did not know where she had taken Finn. He did not ask. He sat in the darkness, listening to the wind, feeling the weight of 7 years press against his chest like a stone he could not set down. An hour passed. 2. The door of the healing tent opened. She stepped out, her silhouette sharp against the lamplight. She walked toward him, her steps unhurried, her hands empty. "Finn is asleep," she said. "He asked if you would be here tomorrow." "Yes." "I told him you would. I told him you were not the kind of man who leaves twice." The Duke looked up at her. The moonlight caught the silver in her hair, the lines around her mouth, the quiet strength in her shoulders. She was not the girl he had sent away. She was something else entirely, something he had to learn to know. "I will be here every day," he said, "for as long as you let me." She sat beside him on the edge of the fountain. Not close, but not far. The space between them was an ocean he had crossed on his knees. "Why now?" she asked. "Why did you not come for me in the first year, or the second? Why did you wait until the kingdom was dying to find me?" He had asked himself the same question every night for 7 years. "Because I believed the lie," he said. "The lie that I was too good for you. The lie that my title mattered more than my heart. The lie that I could forget you if I tried hard enough." He turned the stone over in his hand. "I tried to forget you. I courted Lady Catherine. I attended every ball, every feast, every hunt. I filled my days with noise and business and the hollow performance of being a duke." He stopped. "But every night I wrote to you. Every night I sat at my desk and told you everything, the conversations I had, the meals I ate, the dreams I could not escape. I wrote to you because it was the only time I felt real." She was silent for a long moment. "I never stopped reading your letters," she said. He turned to look at her. "The ones I kept in the drawer? You said you never sent them." "I did not send them, but I read them, all of them." She just told him she read every letter, every confession, every hollow performance, every word he wrote when he thought no one was watching. If this story is pulling at something in you, if you have ever waited for someone to see the truth you were hiding, then subscribe. Because this channel holds stories about the letters we never send, the words we finally dare to speak, and the courage it takes to read them in the end. Tell me in the comments, what was the lie you had to stop believing before you could truly be seen? She looked at him, directly, without flinching. "When I left Thornwood to heal the king, I came back to the manor one night. I did not go inside. I stood at the gate, watching the windows, trying to decide if I should knock, and I saw you at your desk, writing. I saw the candle burn down to nothing. I saw you press the paper to your lips before you folded it." She looked away. "I knew in that moment that you were not the monster I had made you into. You were a coward, but you were a coward who loved me." The Duke's throat tightened. "Why did you not come inside?" "Because I needed you to come to me," she said. "Not as a duke, not as the man who sent me away. I needed you to become someone else, and I did not know if you could." She stood. She looked down at him. "Now I know." She walked back toward the tent. At the entrance, she paused. "You can stay in the tavern. I will bring Finn to the square at dawn. Do not be late." She disappeared inside. The Duke sat alone in the moonlight, the stone still warm in his hand, the echo of her words settling into the hollow places where grief had lived. He slept that night in the tavern room above the square, the window open to the summer air. He did not dream. For the first time in 7 years he did not need to. At dawn they came. Finn ran across the square, his hair wild, a leather satchel bouncing against his hip. He skidded to a stop in front of the fountain. "Mother said we can walk to the river," he said, breathless. "She said you used to fish when you were a boy. Did you really catch a pike as long as your arm?" "Longer," the Duke said. "Show me." They walked together, the boy, the man, and the woman who walked a few steps behind, watching. The mist was burning off the river, the water running fast and clear. The Duke showed Finn how to cast a line, how to read the current, how to find the deep pools where the big fish hid. He showed him how to be patient. By noon, they had caught nothing. Finn did not care. He sat on the bank, his feet in the water, drawing a map of the river in the mud with a stick. "The river bends here," he said, pointing, "and there is a castle here, and here is where the dragon lives." "A dragon? Not a real dragon, a big fish. Mother said you told her about a fish that was so big it pulled you into the water when you were a boy." The Duke laughed. It was a rusty sound, unpracticed. "I fell in." "And you caught it?" "No, it caught me. I was the one who got away." Finn laughed, a bright, unguarded sound that made the Duke's chest ache. The woman sat on the bank, her knees drawn up, her arms wrapped around her legs. She was watching them. The Duke met her eyes. She did not look away. That evening the three of them ate together in the healing tent, bread and cheese and apples, the simple food of people who did not need silver platters to know they were sharing something sacred. Finn talked through the meal. He told the Duke about the stones he collected, the dog he loved, the dream he had of sailing to the edge of the map. He asked questions about the kingdom, about the stars, about what it meant to be a duke. "Does that mean you are in charge of everyone?" Finn asked. "It means I'm responsible for everyone," the Duke said. "It is not the same thing." Finn thought about this. "Mother says being responsible means you cannot run away even when you want to." The Duke looked at her. She was peeling an apple, her eyes on the blade. "She is right," he said. "I think I would like being responsible," Finn said, taking a bite of bread, "but I do not think I would like being a duke." "Why not?" "Too many buttons." The duke laughed again. The sound came easier this time. The summer stretched into weeks. The duke stayed in Thornwood. He did not return to Ashworth Manor. He sent a letter to his steward, instructing him to manage the estate. He sent a letter to Lady Catherine's family, releasing her from the engagement, a letter he should have written 7 years ago. He walked with Finn every morning. He helped Ilara in the healing tent, carrying supplies, boiling water, learning the names of herbs he had never noticed. He was not a duke. He was a man learning to be useful. And slowly, imperceptibly, the wall between them began to crack. It happened in small moments. She handed him a cup of tea one evening, and her fingers brushed his. She did not pull away. She asked him to read to Finn at night, stories from the books she had stolen from the library all those years ago. She let him sit beside her at the edge of the fire, their shoulders almost touching, the stars wheeling overhead. One night, after Finn had fallen asleep, she spoke. "I have been thinking about the garden," she said. "The night you asked me to stay." The duke's breath caught. "I remember," he said. "Tell me what you remember." He closed his eyes. "The roses. You were wearing a blue dress. Your hands were shaking. You asked me if I loved you, and I said yes, but I said it like it was a weakness." She said nothing. "I was wrong," he said. "It is not a weakness. It is the only strength I have ever had. And I buried it because I was afraid." She reached out, her hand found his. "I was afraid too," she said. She did not say more. She did not need to. The autumn came. The leaves turned gold and red. Finn started school in the village, learning his letters and numbers, making friends with the butcher's son and the baker's daughter. The duke stayed. He built a small room onto the back of the healing tent, a place for himself, simple and clean, with a desk and a bed and a window that faced the river. He wrote to his steward every week, managing the estate from a distance. He learned to bake bread. He learned to chop wood. He learned to sit in silence without the weight of a title pressing on his shoulders. He became a man. And one evening, as the first frost painted the grass silver, Ilara came to his door. She was carrying a candle. Her hair was loose. Her eyes were bright. "I have something to tell you," she said. He stepped aside. She entered the small room. She set the candle on the desk. "I have not said the words," she said. "I have not been able to. But I want you to know." She turned to face him. "I do not love you the way I did before. That love was young. It was blind. It was a girl's love for a boy who wore a crown and promised her the stars." She stepped closer. "I love you differently now. I love the man you have become, the man who kneels, the man who writes letters, the man who learned to be patient." She placed her hand on his chest, over his heart. "I love the man who stayed." He covered her hand with his. "It is more than I deserve." "It is not about what you deserve," she said. "It is about what you choose." She rose on her toes. She kissed him. It was not the kiss of two young lovers in a garden. It was the kiss of two people who had walked through fire and emerged on the other side, scarred but whole. It tasted like forgiveness. The spring returned. The roses bloomed again in the garden of Ashworth Manor, wild, untrimmed, exactly as the Duke had left them. And on the first day of summer, 1 year after he had knelt in the village square, the Duke of Ashworth stood in that garden with a woman on his arm and a boy at his side. Finn held a bouquet of wildflowers, picked from the meadow. "Are you going to marry her now?" he asked. The Duke looked at Ilara. She was wearing a dress the color of the sky at dawn. Her hair was woven with ribbons. She was smiling. "Yes," he said. "I am going to marry her now." "Good," Finn said. "I am tired of sleeping on the cot in the healing tent." The wedding was small. There were no nobles, no dignitaries, no representatives from the court. The king sent a letter of blessing, sealed with royal wax, but he did not attend. He understood that this ceremony was not for the kingdom. It was for the 3 people who had waited 7 years to become a family. They said their vows under the old oak tree in the village square, where he had first knelt. Finn stood between them, holding both their hands. The priest spoke the words that bound them. The village cheered. The baker brought a cake. The butcher roasted a pig. The children chased each other through the square, laughing, covered in flour and happiness. And when the sun set, staining the sky in shades of amber and rose, the Duke took his wife's hand and led her to the edge of the river, where he had taught their son to fish. 7 years, he said. 7 years, she repeated. I would do it again. Every moment of grief, every letter I never sent, Every night I spent alone. I would do it all again if it meant ending here with you. She looked at him. The river murmured beside them. The stars were beginning to emerge, one by one, like promises kept. You do not have to do it again, she said. You only have to stay. Then I will stay. They stood in silence, watching the water flow past, carrying the years away. Behind them, in the village square, a boy was showing his friends a smooth grey stone he had found in the river. This is my lucky stone, Finn said. My father gave it to me. He did not say, the Duke. He said, my father. And the night wrapped around them like a promise that would not break.